This is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Mark Martin. Iran is moving to defy the U.S. in a new way today, announcing violations of the 2015 nuclear deal, while demonstrators in Tehran shout, "Death to America." It's the 40th anniversary of the 1979 hostage crisis when revolutionaries seized the U.S. Embassy in Iran. Reporter Heather Sells has been following the developments, and she joins us now with more. Heather.
Mark, it has been a year of rising tensions between the U.S. and Iran, and today's events mark a significant challenge. Iran announced its latest break from the 2015 nuclear deal that President Trump withdrew from over a year ago. It says it now operates twice as many advanced centrifuges banned by the 2015 agreement, and that it's working on a prototype that is 50 times faster than what the deal allows. The news comes on the 40th anniversary of the U.S. hostage crisis. Today, demonstrators at a rally in Tehran chanted "Death to America." They held signs reading "Down with Israel." The head of the Iranian army called the U.S., quote, "a deadly scorpion," and said Iran is ready to trample the U.S.
Heather, what has been the response so far?
Well, Mark, the European Commission did push back today, saying that it supports the International Atomic Energy Agency that monitors Iran's nuclear activity and called on Iran to reverse its action.
We urge Iran to reverse all activities that are inconsistent with its commitments under the JCPOA and to refrain from any further measures that would undermine the preservation and full implementation of the nuclear deal.
Today's news comes amidst rising U.S.-Iran tensions. The U.S. believes Iran is behind attacks on foreign oil tankers in the Persian Gulf over the summer. Iran has acknowledged shooting down a U.S. drone in June. Iran blames the Trump administration for renewing sanctions on its lucrative oil industry. And today, the president of Iran said, quote, "We should be able to sell our oil." And he did make an offer. He said that Iran would reverse the steps that it's taken so far, which includes going beyond the nuclear deal's enrichment and stockpile limitations, if Europe will find a way for Iran to avoid the U.S. sanctions that are cutting off its crude oil sales. Mark.
Joining us now with more is our Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell. Chris, what does Ambassador Michael Oren say Israel is doing to prepare for a war in the near future?
Well, Mark, he paints a very ominous picture of what might happen. He says that the Israeli Security Cabinet has met in the last couple of weeks about an open war with Iran. They have a new program called Momentum, which is bolstering and strengthening Israel's missile defense system. There's war footing on the northern border with Hezbollah right across the border in Lebanon. So they're doing a lot, preparing for any particular scenario that could happen, open war with Iran in the foreseeable future.
What are Iran's goals throughout the Middle East and against Israel, Chris?
Well, you can see it both on the land and you can see it in their rhetoric right now. They say rhetorically, and they say quite often, Mark, that they want to destroy the Jewish state. There was an Iranian official not too long ago that said they could destroy Israel in about 30 minutes. What they're doing practically on the ground is they're trying to actually surround Israel with proxies. In Yemen, they have guided missiles that could hit Israel. On Israel's northern border, they has Hezbollah with about 150,000 rockets. Also in Syria and Iraq, Iran is trying to use their Shiite proxies to have missiles there as well. And obviously, they have their own missiles in Iran. So they also want to build a land bridge from Tehran all the way to the Mediterranean with the goal of surrounding Israel and destroying the Jewish state. And they say that quite openly. And one other note to mark right now is the fact that there's unrest in Lebanon and also Iraq. And many of these demonstrations are anti-Iranian. So this makes it an unstable situation in the Middle East. And perhaps Iran would feel they have to do something to distract away from these demonstrations against Israel.
Why are the experiences that Israel went through in 2006 relevant now in 2019?
Well, in 2006, Mark, we were actually on the northern border. That was the Second Lebanon War. And at that time, Hezbollah, which is Iran's proxy up there in Lebanon, fired about 4,000 rockets during a 34-day war. It actually paralyzed northern Israel. About 1 million Israelis either had to be in bomb shelters or they had to flee south. Now, Hezbollah has not 4,000 rockets. They have an estimated 150,000 rockets. And some of those rockets are precision-guided missiles that could hit military installations, hospitals, civilian centers all the way through Israel. And so when you take 2006 experience and multiply that exponentially of what Hezbollah could do, it really poses a serious existential threat to the state of Israel.
Chris, Ambassador Oren asks the question, what would the U.S. do if a conflict comes? What does history tell us that America would do?
Well, history tells us that the United States will stand by Israel, and right now you have an administration that is arguably perhaps one of the most pro-Israel administrations in Israel. You have President Trump that moved the U.S. Embassy here to Jerusalem. You have Vice President Pence, who is very pro-Israel, as well as U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. So it looks like in any conflict, it would be the United States would certainly stand behind Israel. But one other note, Mark, is that sometimes lately, the United States has been perceived as weak. They didn't respond when Iran shot down a U.S. drone. They didn't respond when Iran attacked Saudi Arabia's facility. They have pulled out part of northeast Syria. All that makes the U.S. look weak in the eyes of many nations here in the region. So it's, but regardless of that, it still looks like the United States would certainly stand by its #1 ally here in the Middle East, Israel.
Okay, thank you. Chris Mitchell, our Middle East Bureau Chief. Thanks for your insight, sir. Meanwhile, Turkey says it has captured slain ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's older sister in northwestern Syria. A senior Turkish official said the 65-year-old, known as Rasmiya Awad, is suspected of being affiliated with the extremist group. She was captured on Monday evening in a raid on a trailer container she was living in with her family in Aleppo province of Syria. Officials say little is known about her, and they did not elaborate on her possible ties to ISIS. Al-Baghdadi was killed in a U.S. raid last month. Here in the U.S., voters in 5 states go to the polls today to cast ballots in state and local elections. Virginia may prove a bellwether for next year's presidential and congressional races. Todd Gilbert is the Virginia House of Delegates Majority Leader. He says outsiders have spent big money in hopes of changing the balance of power in his state.
The amount of money coming in, mostly from the Democratic side, billionaires like George Soros and Tom Steyer, the environmentalist, and Michael Bloomberg, all pouring millions of dollars into Virginia races to try and reshape our state and ultimately reshape the country.
1 week before Election Day, more than $82 million had been spent, making this the most expensive election in Virginia history. We're going to have more on this story and others this evening on Faith Nation. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. A Colorado man is in custody for plotting to bomb a synagogue. The suspect is accused of posting messages of hate online and wanting to start a race war by bombing Temple Emmanuel in Pueblo. FBI agents posing as white supremacists met with him, bringing pipe bombs and sticks of dynamite. The suspect reportedly said, "This is absolutely gorgeous," as he examined them.
According to the complaint affidavit, Mr. Holzer self-identifies as a skinhead and a white supremacist. Mr. Holzer went on to suggest to undercover agents that they use explosive devices to destroy the synagogue and, quote, get that place off the map. Mr. Holzer also stated that he was not concerned about any loss of life from the attack because such victims would be Jews.
Authorities consider the case domestic terrorism and a hate crime. Coming up, how one Christian college is working to pave the way for future Christian leaders and inspire students. But before we go to the break, here's a look at what's trending on CBNNews.com.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. Private Christian colleges all over the country face many challenges that state-run universities do not, and the biggest challenge is funding. One of the top Christian colleges in the country is hoping their new fundraising campaign will make this type and quality of education affordable for entire new generations of students. Dr. Michael Lindsay is the president of Gordon College, and he joins us now with more. Dr. Lindsay, tell us about your new fundraising campaign called Faith Rising. How is this fundraising going to help your college and your students?
Thanks very much for having me on. We're delighted to be able to celebrate the launch of Faith Rising, which is helping to add scholarship dollars to make a Gordon education more affordable for a significantly larger segment of students than we've been able to serve in the past. Our vision is to be able to prepare the people of God for the work of God. And this is our 130th anniversary year, so we decided that we would try and launch a $130 million fundraising campaign, the vast majority of which is going to help support student scholarships.
The announcement came with even more exciting news. You did receive a very large donation toward your campaign. Tell us more about that.
It's an amazing gift of $75.5 million, almost all of which is going directly to benefit endowing student scholarships. It came from a family who wanted their generosity to be anonymous. They wanted to keep the focus on the Lord and their desire to try and honor him. And we're deeply excited to be the steward of this transformational gift. Not only is it the largest gift Gordon has ever received, but it's the largest gift ever given to a Christian college like Gordon.
Do you hope that this new campaign inspires other Christian colleges to do something similar?
Absolutely. We think that the kind of education that happens on a campus like Gordon is perfect for helping to meet the needs and the opportunities of 21st century students. We're excited about how the Lord has been blessing the work we're doing, and also really gratified to see how folks with resources, donor families, have been responding. Already, we've seen a number of folks who've come alongside us to say they'd like to join us in the venture. And it's our hope that this not only benefits Gordon and Gordon students, but all of those who are interested in having a faith-based education. We think Christian education is the way to the future and are excited what God's doing in our midst.
Other than funding, what are some other challenges that Christian colleges face today, Dr. Lindsay?
There are 2 million fewer college students today in American institutions than there were 5 years ago. There's a demographic downward trend of the college-bound population. What that means is that we've got to become more creative in helping to make a college education achievable in the hands of more people than we've ever seen before. So enrollment challenges can be found from coast to coast. And one of the things that we're excited about is how scholarship dollars can help make an education like Gordon more affordable, as Christian institutions are trying to serve a whole new segment of families who maybe haven't sent their kids to college in the past.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lindsay, the president of Gordon College. We appreciate your time, and blessings to you in your new endeavors.
Thanks very much.
Still ahead, a man learns he has a rare disease, one that modern medicine cannot cure. So he sets out to treat himself. We'll find out what happened right after this.
Daddy?
Yeah, buddy?
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts, in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Today's medical care is the best it's ever been, but believe it or not, there are still an estimated 7,000 rare diseases that do not have a cure or even a treatment. For tonight's Healthy Living program on the CBN News Channel, our health reporter Lori Johnson sat down with a man who suddenly came down with one of those diseases and miraculously discovered his own cure.
I started feeling more tired than usual, started noticing abdominal pain, and then fluid accumulating in my legs, which just seemed so unusual. Didn't know what it was, but I kept getting more and more tired, and so I took an obstetrics exam and took my written exam and went straight from my exam to the emergency department because I just knew something was wrong. I didn't know what, but I knew something really serious. And they did blood work and told me, David, your liver, your kidneys, and your bone marrow are shutting down. We don't know why. We need to hospitalize you right away.
And how did you respond to that emotionally?
It was terrifying. You know, as a medical student, you know a little bit about health and medicine, you know a little bit about what abnormal lab tests are, but all of a sudden, as a patient, and you see those same lab tests that you've just learned about and what those could actually mean, it was terrifying, and especially the unknown. At this stage, no diagnosis, and it would be many weeks before we got one.
When you finally got the diagnosis, what was it?
So 11 weeks in, I was so sick at that stage that I had been moved in the intensive care unit, and I was on life support, and I was getting daily transfusions, was on dialysis, but so sick that actually my family was encouraged to say their goodbyes, and a priest came in to administer my last rites to me. I was so sick, but fortunately, a day before, I was diagnosed with idiopathic multicentric Castleman disease, a rare immune system disorder that's kind of like a cross between an autoimmune disease and a cancer, and we don't actually know which category to put it into. And basically, the immune system attacks your vital organs for an unknown cause. There are about there there are about 5,000 patients diagnosed each year in the U.S. with Castleman disease, and about a third of those patients with my subtype of Castleman disease will die within 5 years of diagnosis. Another third will die within 10 years of diagnosis.
So you thought maybe that was the end, or that not long after you had first started exhibiting your first symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, getting the diagnosis, we so badly wanted a diagnosis while I was sick for those 11 weeks, and then when we got the diagnosis, we were devastated by what I was now diagnosed with. This is such a poorly understood and such a serious disorder that we were terrified and really just sad that we were going through this. I had lost my mom to cancer several years before, and we'd gone through this journey of having a diagnosis of someone we love, a serious diagnosis, and hearing about the statistics and what we could expect was really scary for us.
When the priest came in and administered last rites and you said goodbye to your family, what was that like?
So it was really scary for me. It was a time of for me, probably the biggest feeling that I had was as I looked back on my life. So, now I've had my last rites read to me. I've said goodbye to my family. I was prepared in the sense that, I had said those goodbyes, but then the next thing I did was turn to kind of reflecting on my life, what I had done, what I hadn't done. And what I found was that I didn't regret anything that I had done in my life. I didn't regret anything that I had said. The things that I regretted were things that I hadn't said or things that I hadn't done and that I wouldn't be able to do. I had dated an incredible person named Caitlin before I got sick, and we had broken up just a few months before, and I thought we had all the time in the world. And I said, it's okay that we're not together. If it's meant to be, we'll get back together. We've got plenty of time. And then there I was on my deathbed and was fully aware that I didn't have more time, and I just regretted that I didn't make the most of the time that I could have had with her. I regretted that I wasn't going to, or I mourned that I wasn't going to be able to get married and have a family and experience those special moments. And so when I started to feel better, when I got treated with chemotherapy and that started to make me feel better, I was just so grateful for every day. And I started to live with this motto that I say, it's think it, do it. And that's that, things that you want to do that you think are the right things to do is telling someone you love them, being there for people. Don't talk yourself out of them.
When you received your chemotherapy, you started improving, but then you had many setbacks, right? And that started you on your journey to figure out what was really wrong with you and really come up with your own treatment, right?
That's exactly right. So just, first almost dying, getting a diagnosis, this was just the beginning.
And as it turns out, that man figured out that a drug already on the market for a completely different medical condition also helped him with his own. You can find out what he did and watch the entire interview tonight on our Healthy Living program. It's at 9:30 Eastern Time, only on the CBN News Channel. After the break, a look at a new film that highlights the relationship between President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back. On the surface, President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II had little in common, but the two leaders were shot by would-be assassins within weeks of one another in 1981. And that shared near-death experience created a strong bond between them. That's the subject of the new film. Ephraim Graham brings us the story.
It's one of the least known stories of the 20th century, how President Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II worked together to bring down communism and end the Cold War. It's a story now told in a new documentary film called The Divine Plan. In the spring of 1981, assassins shot both President Reagan and Pope John Paul II, just 6 weeks apart. Both men nearly died.
Both of them lost half their blood. One 60% estimate, one 60%, one 50%, and some of the facts come from the New York Times.
They both said to one another, this Protestant president and obviously Catholic Pope, they said to one another that they believed that God had spared their lives because they should have bled to death. They both should have died.
While the Pope and President had admired one another from afar, the assassination attempts drew them together. When meeting for the first time at the Vatican the following year, they confided in each other their belief God had spared their lives for a reason. That reason? To defeat communism. In private, Reagan put a name on it, the Divine Plan, or the DP.
And DP was a code word he always used with his own cabinet, Casey and other. When they'd say DP, it was a code word because they felt like certain things were always occurring in some kind of higher design. So when he confessed to John Paul II that he felt like, not that he didn't have a faith, but that his faith mission was galvanized by that assassination, John Paul II agreed with him, and they were united from that point forward.
On the surface, the two men appeared to have little in common.
John Paul II, because he only knew of Reagan through Western media, actually was suspect about him being a bit of a warmonger, because if you listen to Western media at the time, so he wanted to meet, on top of this, he wanted to meet Reagan face to face to see if he was a man of peace. But after that meeting, he told his peers that Reagan was a man of peace. We could partner with him.
Robert Orlando, who wrote and directed The Divine Plan, says they quickly discovered strong agreement on the bedrock principles of faith, freedom, and human dignity.
They also both suffered a lot in their lives. By the time he was 21, he describes himself as very much alone, and all the people he had loved had died already.
Although they visited in person only 5 times, President Reagan and Pope John Paul began a rich correspondence, and through it, developed an extraordinary bond. From the Polish Solidarity movement in the Pope's homeland to the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Divine Plan shows how the President and the Pope persevered together in prayer and diplomacy until Soviet communism ultimately unraveled. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Fascinating information there. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN Newswatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. And tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. Or you can talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.